A few days ago, I asked you to submit data about the blueprints you found and exactly where you found them in Arc Raiders. And after over 3,101 submissions later, we are now finally closer to figuring out exactly how blueprints spawn. Which means all of the data I'm about to show you in this video will help you to find the exact blueprints you're looking for. For example, the Tempest has an incredibly high chance of spawning in night raids and nowhere else, whereas the Snap Hook has a really high chance of spawning in storm raids. There's a lot more interesting data like this to go through thanks to everybody that submitted their own blueprint data. But I'm going to break down everything in this video and go through some important disclaimers that explain what this information's really telling us. Let's first go over some stats about the map conditions and where blueprints are more likely to spawn, because this showcases some potential issues with this data and why we might not be able to tell which blueprints are rarer, but at least we'll be able to know which maps or map conditions blueprints are likely to spawn on. For example, if we take a look at how many blueprints were recorded across day, night, and storm raids, night comes out in number 1, day second, and storm very low down in third at just 3.8%. Now, daytime raids are played significantly more than night and storm events, so this data shows how incredibly beneficial running night raids are to find blueprints. However, it also points out the fact that day raids are just as good to find blueprints. Sure, night raids are better, but there's no point waiting around for a night raid. If you're trying to find blueprints, day raids can work out really well as well, and I found some really great blueprints in day raids, so don't count them out of the picture. If anything, you should probably count out storm raids and not waste too much time on there, unless you're looking for a specific blueprint like the Snap Hook, which we'll get into later. Now, what about each individual map? Which one had the best blueprint results? Well, it's probably no surprise that Damned Battlegrounds and Buried City came out on top, taking their share of about a third of the total blueprints found each. Spaceport and Blue Gate kind of came in joint third, and then Stella Montis was far behind. Now, once again, this kind of points out a potential player bias because most people just prefer looting on Buried City and Damned Battlegrounds. Do blueprints spawn more commonly on this map, or do players just play this map more? Or perhaps there's just more higher density loot areas to find potential blueprints on these maps. We don't really know the answer. The good news is you can find blueprints on any map, but players seem to be having more success on Buried City and Damned Battlegrounds, so that's something to consider, but not to take as fact. Now it's time to move on to some more specific loot pools for each map condition, starting with the augments, which completely change gameplay in such significant ways. Let's talk about these augments then. Where are they dropping the most commonly? First, let's look at raids. Storm, day, and night can drop augments, but from the data that we've collected, day raids have been the most common, followed by night raids. And once again, the drop rate in storm raids has just been so abysmally low that it just doesn't make sense to try and farm them on storm raids. Now let's remember once again that day raids are played far more significantly than night raids and storm raids, so it's safe to say that if you're looking for augments, night raids are the best, and storms really aren't worth doing at all. Day raids, still, you may as well have a good try. You're likely to find them there too. Once again, I want to make sure this is very clear. Day raids will always outweigh the night and storm raids because the number of day raids being played is just far higher, but this goes to show where we should be looking at least. Now, what about map specifics? You may have noticed that some maps have better chances of finding augments. A lot of people usually leave comments on social media that they spawn in Blue Gate a lot. Is that really true? Well, according to the data, it might actually be the case. Buried City definitely has a decent chance, with 40 of the total augments recorded being found there, but Blue Gate swamps Buried City and every other map by a large margin. The good news is augments can drop on any map, but it seems like they have a significantly higher chance in Blue Gate. And I've tested all of the augments individually and their drop rates across all maps, and every single augment type seems to share the same odds, with Blue Gate having the highest number of recorded blueprint finds, followed by Buried City and then the other 3 maps. Now, out of all of the augment blueprints, which one is spawning most commonly? Well, I think this points out another bit of a problem with this data. And like I say, there's no point trying to go through this data and see which augment is rarer or which loot type is rarer because, in my opinion, this data might be a little bit skewed. players are probably more likely to remember the location or time they found their best augment, or the rarest one, and they might forget the more commonly found augments, the ones that they don't really care too much about. So the looting Mark III Survivor augment is the best in the game. Most people are going to remember that and input that data into the form. Either way, if we remove this discrepancy from the rarest augment blueprint chart, we can see that they all have a similarly equal chance of dropping. So if you haven't found a specific augment, you're just going to have to keep looking and eventually you'll get it. Now, what about weapons? Well, it really starts to get interesting with weapons. For most of the common and rare weapons, well, in fact, all of them, they can drop in any map condition. And we're not really seeing any specific special rules for increasing their drop rates. Damn Battlegrounds and Buried City come out on top again, likely because players like playing those maps and looting those maps more often, but they can be found on any map condition and any map event, right? Night raids, storm raids, day raids, anything. You will find all of these weapons. The best thing you can do is just loot every container you come across, and eventually you'll get the blueprints for the El Toro, the Venator, the Bettina, the Torrente, the Osprey, and the Anvil. When it comes to the remaining epic blueprints, it's a bit of a different story though. The Tempest, interestingly, had a 98.3% share of blueprints found in night raids. In fact, out of the 175 Tempest blueprints that were recorded, 173 of those were in night raids. 2 of them were in a day raid and 1 was in a storm. It seems very, very likely that the Tempest drop rate during night raids is significantly higher. And strangely enough, 65% of them were found on Buried City as well. So if you want to absolutely boost your chances of finding a Tempest blueprint, stick to night raids, and if you can, Buried City, and you'll have the best luck there. For the Volcano blueprint, we've got some interesting data to go off there as well. The Hidden Bunker event was the only time the Volcano blueprint was recorded, besides one strange instance of it being found on Buried City night raids. If you've seen the Volcano blueprint or looted it, please show me some footage of it or some screenshots to my Twitter account, gamingmerchant_. I would love to see proof of this. But for the time being, it seems that it's only spawning on the Hidden Bunker event. Which brings us to the Bobcat, another epic tier weapon. There is not enough data for this to be found and almost no footage online. In fact, out of all of the blueprint data that was reported, only 3 were reported to be found. Now, these could be false entries or maybe just straight up lies. What's really interesting about 2 of these submissions, though, is they are both on the Blue Gate Day event. And that's very important because we now have one piece of footage showing somebody finding a Bobcat blueprint on Blue Gate. And guess what? It was during the Locked Gate event. It seems like each epic weapon and perhaps other epic blueprints, for example, maybe the Deadline blueprint, are tied to specific map events. The Tempest is clearly tied to night raids. The Snap Hook clearly tied to storm events. The Bobcat might just be tied to Locked Gate events, which is why nobody can really find it because the Locked Gate event has been removed from the game for some reason. And the Volcano can be found from Hidden Bunker events. So thanks to everybody's information that they've submitted, the picture is becoming clearer. Common and rare blueprints pretty much spawn in almost any event, but the epic blueprints might only appear in specific map conditions. We've also got some information about the medical items. The Vita Spray, Vita Shot, and Defib can spawn on any map. In fact, I found the Vita Shot blueprint myself on a Blue Gate Day raid today. But a strangely large number of players have found the Vita Shot on Stella Montes, perhaps because there's a lot of medical containers on that map. It might suggest that certain container types could play a role on what blueprints drop. I'm not sure though. We don't have enough data to go on by that, unfortunately. For the Vita Spray, it's a pretty even spread across all maps, and interestingly, the Defib blueprint has had a vast majority of reports on Buried City. Once again, it's kind of hard to confirm whether or not that's because it spawns more on Buried City, or it's just because people like looting Buried City a lot. If I were to make a guess, and this is only a guess here, there's no data to 100% confirm it, I believe these blueprints, Vita Spray, Vita Shot, and Defib, are more likely to spawn in medical type containers. There are many pharmacies that get looted like crazy in Buried City, for example, the Plaza Rosa locked building. And Stella Montes also has a large medical area too. We don't have enough data to confirm that yet, but it could be true. When it comes to attachment blueprints and grenade blueprints and other things like that, there doesn't seem to be too much of a clear pattern just yet. So I haven't gathered any data or infographics on those. Just loot every single container you can, and if you can at night, then go for it. I do have one little more piece of information that definitely seems to suggest that some blueprints spawn in certain container types though. So this is something we can investigate in the future. If we take a look at all of these barricade kit submissions, a large portion of them have come from surveyors or the breachable server racks. I also found my own barricade kit from there as well. So not only are there specific loot pools for different map conditions and certain blueprints will only drop in certain map conditions, you're more likely to get certain blueprints if you loot certain containers. We now have the data to back it up with this barricade kit. What that means is, if you are struggling to find a specific blueprint and you've been searching for days or maybe even weeks, chances are you're looking in the wrong place. So you can check out this data for yourself and have a look through to see where other people have found that blueprint. Just do a quick Control F to search for it and you might see some interesting results. The final thing I want to say about this is all subject to change. The devs could change the loot pool at any time, just like they did with nerfing the patina drop rate. But either way, it gives us a nice insight into how the devs plan blueprint drops. It's very clear that they tie specific blueprints to specific map events and sometimes different container types. Having this knowledge will make it a lot easier for us to find the blueprints we have when we have limited time to go and hunt for them. I hope this video was useful. If you found it useful, please consider subscribing. And thank you to everybody that submitted data into this form. It's become incredibly valuable for the community. I'll see you all in the next one. Cheerio.